Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, I have to ask, where are you all watching from? Are you tuning in from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or maybe somewhere smaller that still holds big memories? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It really helps us reach more people who enjoy heartfelt storytelling just like you. Now, let's get into today's story. I never expected that a simple business trip would turn into one of the most unexpectedly profound experiences of my life. I had booked a small, quiet hotel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that felt like it existed just for me to step away from the chaos of work and everyday life. The room was simple, but it had large windows that let in the golden glow of late afternoon sun, the kind that softens everything it touches. I had just settled into the armchair by the window with a cup of lukewarm coffee when I heard the knock. It was him, my younger brother, Mark. He had called earlier saying he might swing by, but I didn't expect him so soon. His presence filled the room in a way that made the air feel heavier, warmer, somehow charged with unspoken words. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, looking around as if he had walked into a memory he wasn't sure he was allowed to step into. "Hey," I said, smiling, trying to break the sudden quiet. He nodded, eyes scanning the room, and finally, after what felt like forever, he just sat down on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped loosely between his knees. I could tell he had something on his mind, something he wasn't ready to say aloud. I poured him a cup of coffee, careful not to make the silence awkward. Sometimes I realized silence itself can speak more loudly than words ever could. And in that moment, his silence was saying everything. It was saying he needed this, needed me, needed to just be present without pretense or explanation. We didn't rush to fill the space between us. Instead, we let it grow around us, a kind of gentle tension that felt more like connection than discomfort. I watched the sunlight move across the room, casting long, shifting shadows, and for a moment, it was as though time itself had slowed down, letting us just exist together without expectation. Mark finally spoke, not about what I expected. He didn't complain about work or talk about trivial matters. He simply said, "It's good to see you like this, at peace." His voice was quiet, almost hesitant, but it carried a weight of sincerity that made me realize just how much he had been carrying on his own. And in that simple exchange, a lot shifted between us. There was an understanding that didn't need explanation, a quiet acknowledgement that our relationship had room to grow beyond the surface-level interactions we'd had for years. It was a gentle awakening, and I found myself wanting to hold on to it, to let it guide how we spoke and moved around each other in this tiny, sunlit hotel room. We spent the next hour just talking about small things, books we'd read, movies we'd enjoyed, little moments from our childhood that still made us laugh. There was a softness to the conversation, a rhythm I hadn't realized I missed. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the room in shades of amber and rose, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet, unspoken gratitude for the chance to just be with him, without the usual noise and pretense that life demanded. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, but it was real. And I knew, in some unspoken way, that this visit, this quiet, wordless connection, would stay with me far longer than I could have imagined. As evening settled outside, the city lights began to flicker on, one by one, like distant stars scattered across the horizon. The hotel room felt smaller now, cozier, as if it had absorbed the quiet intimacy of the afternoon and held it close. Mark stayed on the bed, still quiet, while I moved around the room, tidying up a little and arranging the remnants of our coffee cups. He finally looked at me and said, "I didn't realize how much I needed this. Just to sit and not have to explain everything." His voice was softer than usual, a little uncertain, but it carried an honesty I wasn't used to hearing from him. I paused for a moment, letting his words sink in, realizing that this trip, something so ordinary in its planning, was becoming extraordinary in ways neither of us expected. I sat down beside him, careful not to crowd him, but close enough that the space between us felt comfortable rather than awkward. "Sometimes," I said slowly, "we don't realize how much silence can say. I think we forget to just be present with each other." He nodded, and for a moment we simply watched the city through the window, the lights reflecting in his eyes. There was a quiet understanding there, one that didn't need words. I could feel the years of unspoken worries, small resentments, and missed conversations begin to ease, as if this shared space, this hotel room and this evening, were offering us a chance to reset, to reconnect in a way we hadn't before. Eventually, Mark began to talk about something from his past, something he rarely shared with anyone. He spoke about a difficult choice he had made years ago, one that had weighed on him silently. I listened, letting him speak without interruption, feeling a mixture of surprise and empathy. It was strange and comforting all at once. How easy it felt to listen when the world outside didn't matter, when no one was rushing us, when nothing demanded immediate attention. I shared my own experiences too, the small failures, the moments of doubt, the things I'd never thought to tell anyone. It was like we were peeling back layers we had both been carrying, slowly, carefully, without fear of judgment. The room seemed to hold our words, the low hum of the city below acting as a gentle background, creating a cocoon where we could just exist as ourselves. At one point, Mark reached for the old photo album I had tucked in my bag for the trip. We flipped through pages filled with pictures of childhood birthdays, vacations, and family gatherings. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly as we pointed out old hairstyles, awkward fashion choices, and funny expressions frozen in time. I noticed how his laughter softened something inside me, how the warmth of shared memories could heal unspoken distances. As night deepened, a quiet peace settled between us. We didn't need to plan the rest of the evening. We simply existed together in a shared stillness. It wasn't dramatic or loud, but it was profound. There was trust, understanding, and an emotional closeness that neither of us had anticipated when he first knocked on the hotel door. By the time we finally turned off the lights, there was a subtle shift, an unspoken promise that our bond had grown stronger, more open, and more sincere. In that quiet hotel room, I realized that sometimes the most important journeys aren't the ones we take across cities or countries. They're the ones we take together, in silence, in understanding, and in presence. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains in soft, muted streaks, painting the room in shades of gold and cream. I woke first, as usual, and watched Mark sleep for a moment longer than I normally would. There was a calmness to him that I hadn't noticed in years, a vulnerability that made me realize how rarely we truly see the people we care about when life moves so fast. He stirred as I moved around the room, stretching and letting out a small sigh. "Morning," he said, his voice still husky from sleep. There was no awkwardness, no pretense, just the quiet presence we had nurtured together the day before. We shared a simple breakfast at the small hotel cafe, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee hanging in the air. We didn't rush. We talked about the city outside, about small things we noticed on the streets below, and even the weather, as ordinary as that felt. But everything felt different somehow, more alive, more meaningful. It was like we had discovered a new rhythm to being together. After breakfast, we decided to take a walk. The streets were bustling with life, but our pace was slow, unhurried, and deliberate. I noticed how he would glance at me, his expression open, almost searching, as if confirming that I was still there, still connected. There were moments of silence, too, and they weren't uncomfortable. They were part of the conversation, part of the unspoken understanding that had grown between us. We found a small park tucked between buildings, a quiet oasis in the midst of the city. We sat on a weathered bench, watching children play and leaves drift along the paths. Mark began talking about his work, but it wasn't the usual surface-level chatter. It was about the challenges he faced, the successes he rarely shared, and the lessons he had learned along the way. I listened, feeling pride, empathy, and a sense of closeness that surprised me. I shared my own reflections too, not just about work, but about life, choices, and the moments of doubt that had shaped me. There was no judgment, no need to impress, just honest conversation between two people who had suddenly realized how much they had missed in each other's lives. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, we found ourselves back in the hotel room. The quiet was different this time, not heavy, but comfortable, like a familiar blanket wrapped around us. Mark pulled out an old journal he had kept, filled with thoughts and sketches from years past. We leafed through it together, laughing softly at the memories and nodding in quiet understanding at the entries that spoke of struggles and growth. It struck me then how much we had both changed, and yet how easy it felt to reconnect. There was a delicate balance between past and present, between what had been left unsaid and what we were discovering now. I realized that this visit, this time together, wasn't just about catching up. It was about building a deeper connection, one that didn't rely on constant communication, but on presence, trust, and understanding. As evening fell again, painting the room with deep oranges and soft purples, we sat in silence, each of us absorbed in our thoughts. There was a calmness, a sense of peace, and an unspoken promise that our relationship had entered a new phase, one marked not by words alone, but by shared understanding and emotional presence. I looked at him, and he looked back, and for the first time in years, I felt that we were exactly where we were supposed to be, together, fully and quietly, in a space where hearts and minds could meet without pretense. The morning light was softer than usual, diffused through a gentle mist outside the hotel window. There was a calm in the room, the kind that comes after long conversations and shared silences, the kind that makes you realize how rare and valuable these moments are. I sat in the armchair by the window, watching Mark as he quietly packed his things. There was no rush, no awkwardness, just a steady rhythm to our movements, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the weight of what we had discovered together. When he looked up at me, there was a quiet smile, the kind that didn't need words to express understanding. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything, for letting me just be here." I nodded, feeling the depth of his gratitude in a way that went beyond speech. It was a shared acknowledgement, a mutual recognition of the bond we had strengthened over these past days. We lingered a little longer, neither of us eager to leave the room that had held so much meaning. The sunlight fell in warm streaks across the bedspread, painting the space with the same golden tones that had greeted us when we arrived. I realized then that the hotel room had become more than just a place to rest. It had become a vessel for connection, for understanding, for growth. Before leaving, we stood by the window together, looking out at the city. It was busy, chaotic, full of people rushing from place to place, but inside our quiet bubble, the world felt simpler, more manageable. I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for the city or the hotel, but for the rare chance to reconnect with someone who had always been part of my life, yet who I hadn't truly seen until now. As we walked toward the lobby, I noticed small details I hadn't paid attention to before. The way he held his jacket, the slight hesitation in his step, the quiet confidence in his smile. There was a new layer to him, just as there was a new layer to me. And in that shared evolution, there was a sense of hope, a sense of possibility for the future of our relationship. We said our goodbyes at the hotel entrance, the chilly air outside contrasting with the warmth we had cultivated inside. "Take care," I said, feeling a lump in my throat, not of sadness, but of appreciation for the journey we had shared. He nodded, giving me one last smile, the kind that carries both love and understanding. "You too," he replied. As I watched him walk away, I realized that this visit had changed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the conversations or the memories or even the quiet silences. It was the recognition that meaningful connections require presence, patience, and the willingness to listen without judgment. I felt a sense of calm settle deep within me, a quiet confidence that we had both grown, individually and together. Back in my hotel room, I sat by the window once more, letting the late afternoon sun wash over me. The city moved on outside, but inside, I carried a sense of clarity and gratitude. Life was still busy, still unpredictable, but now I knew that these rare, unexpected moments of connection could anchor us, remind us of what truly matters. And as the shadows lengthened and the day faded into evening, I smiled, knowing that this experience, quiet, unexpected, and deeply emotional, would remain with me, a gentle reminder of the strength of family, the beauty of understanding, and the power of simply being present.